So last Friday, I walked into an Orthodox church for the very first time. I attended the Divine Liturgy, and it was actually the Holy Cross Festival, so I really didn't know what to expect. But I had heard about like there's gonna be incense and chanting and lots of standing and stuff like that. And honestly, I was excited but nervous at the same time, because I had been doing some research on what Orthodox Christians believe, and it really felt like maybe this is what I've been missing, in most of my Christian walk. I've been a Christian since I was a little child. I can't ever remember a time that I did not follow God or believe in Jesus. We always went to like Baptist or kind of like non-denominational, I guess, type churches. Maybe like I've been to some Pentecostal churches and stuff. That was always kind of weird for me. Assemblies of God and stuff like that. But I've never experienced this before. I went to a Catholic church with a friend when I was little, and I vaguely remember it. I remember it feeling very odd as well. So I was nervous. I was like, okay, what's actually going to happen during what is the Divine Liturgy, and would I feel out of place? Like, well, what's this going to be like? So let me take you through my first experience. So we got there to the church, and as soon as you walk in, like, it's beautiful. Like, this was super beautiful, amazing. There was like icons everywhere and just religious art and gold and candles and beautiful curtains and everything, and the smell of incense. It was like a sensory, it was like for all your senses. So there was an area where people could light candles and stuff. I didn't really know what that was for, but so I didn't do it or anything. I was there with my husband and my daughter, and my daughter's friend wanted to come. We all come from the same background, except for my husband. My husband grew up Catholic, but his family was into a lot of like Santeria type stuff with the Catholicism. So he was actually kind of freaked out. As soon as he walked in, he was like, "This is mad Catholic," and I was like, "No, give it a chance." I was really hoping that this would be what I was looking for, but I was excited, and so was my daughter. My husband was turned off right away because of all of the Mary and the saints and everybody, all the stuff around, and people doing the cross, crossing themselves and stuff like that, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing. Like I said, this is all new to me. I just, I was like, whatever, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna give it a try. So there wasn't a lot of people, I guess, because it was like a Friday evening service and it was like a special festival service. So there wasn't a lot of people, but there was supposed to be a community event after that. So initially when we got there, there was like barely anybody in the actual like sanctuary area. I don't know if that's what you call it. Because most of the people were in the back, like preparing food and stuff like that in the kitchen area. So everybody else came in later. So I can't say anybody like greeted me per se, until like I stepped out to go to the bathroom, and then one lady did greet me. She asked me, she said, "Do I know you?" And I was like, "I don't think so," because I don't. We drove an hour to get to this place. It's not close by. And she's like, "Are you sure? I feel like I know you." And I was like, "I don't think so." Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we went to a Antiochian Orthodox church. So they did the service in English and in Arabic. It was both. So they started it off like all in Arabic, and then they would, I guess they read off the prayer in English, and then they would go back and forth from English to Arabic. Like they would do one in English, then they would do one line in Arabic, and it would go back and forth. I know a few words in Arabic, so I was like picking out a few words. I was like, "Oh, I know that word, Allah." Like I know that one. Or like there was a couple words that I knew. So I was like, okay, I'm just trying to follow. It was hard to follow though. So before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about like kind of the feeling of the place. It did feel like super calming and peaceful. It felt very like reverent compared to regular churches that I've been to. honestly, the reason why I went was because I wanted something different. I feel like every church I go to, it's just very, what's the word? Very superficial, It feels, I hate to say this, I really do hate to say this, but there's a lot of churches I go to and it just feels kind of corny to me. It doesn't feel like God is there. It feels like, or it's too performative and it doesn't feel real. It feels like people are just trying to be holier than thou, or it just feels like people are acting or being crazy and doing crazy stuff. Like I said, like you go to a Pentecostal church and people are running all over the place, or everybody's in the church speaking in tongues. I'm like, hello, y'all aren't supposed to all be doing that at the same time. There's supposed to be an interpreter, like there's supposed to be order, and things are super disordered. Or like you go to a Baptist church or something, and the sermon's real good and the theology's real good, but the worship is kind of blah, or what I mean, everybody has its thing. But again, I've been having a really hard time connecting with God at church, and I've been having more success connecting with God at home. And I know people say you're not supposed to do that, but it's just the way it is. And where I live, there's really not a lot of choices. There's like a million Catholic churches, there's like a Jewish synagogue, and then there's a bunch of non-denominational churches, a Baptist church, and we've tried a few of them, and then like some really weird like Pentecostal church that I will not go to because they do a lot of weird stuff there. So like we just haven't been successful. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try something completely different that I've never even thought about doing, completely off the wall. So, and I had some reasons for that, but we'll talk about that in another video. So as they started, like I said, they started it in Arabic, and then they went into English. They had like a little book I could follow along. So I was like, okay, so I'm like, what are we supposed to do here? So, and it's kind of hard to understand. Like one of the guys, I could understand the prayer, and they're singing the prayer, and like the kind of like the Arabic tones, which I like that kind of stuff. I like the Middle Eastern thing. I have a little bit of that in my ancestry, so that's always been a thing I've always liked, even before I knew about that. But so I was like, oh, okay, this is cool, like this feels kind of different, so I was like, but I was confused because I was like, okay, one of the guys was speaking, I couldn't really understand him very well, and then the other guy speaking, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what he's saying, and then I'm trying to keep up in the book, and I'm looking at the book, and then I'm trying to show my husband, and then I could see my husband's face, and he's just like, oh my gosh, I can't even do it. Like he can't. He just wanted to go. He did not, I knew he didn't want to be there. So then that kind of like ruined some of the experience for me, because I couldn't really, I'm over here like thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do? And then I'm like, what are we doing next? What does all this stuff mean? I'm looking at my daughter, I'm looking at my husband, I'm looking at her friend, and I'm just like, okay, what is everybody thinking? Is everybody like weirded out by this? Are they cool with it? It was super weird to me too. It was very strange. I didn't understand what was going on or what we were doing next or how long it would go on. It went on for quite a while. Probably about almost 2 hours, like an hour and 40 minutes or something. So after they did like the hymns and the chanting, they went into like verses and they read all those, and then they like continued back into like the choir, and then it just went on and on and on. And then the priest comes through like with the censer thing, with the incense, and he did that like 3 times, I want to say. I was worried about my asthma. I was worried that it was going to bother my asthma, but luckily it didn't. I was really surprised. It did make me really sleepy though, I feel like, after I left. But yeah, so the priest comes through, he's doing the incense thing. And then he, is like saying a few things. He's like behind the curtain, and then he's coming out, and then, just kind of all these different things are happening. And then they go back to the singing multiple times, and it was like very repetitive. So I was just like, okay, like, what are we doing? What is the point? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be following along? Am I supposed to be singing? Am I supposed to be praying with them? I really didn't know what to do. I felt like very out of place. I'm like, and then as he would come around, people would follow him. Like people would physically turn their bodies towards the priest while he was doing the incense towards us. Like he was like putting the incense smoke towards the people and yes, we were standing almost the whole entire time. There was a couple times we got to sit down, but we stood most of the time, which was different because I'm used to sitting at church. So that was a little bit tough, but it was doable. I made sure that I wore shoes that were not going to kill my feet, and I told my daughter to do the same thing. So that was a lot with the standing, but again, like I said, it wasn't terrible. I thought it would be worse, but I just kind of like swayed back and forth, and I kind of like moved and shifted around a little bit. I kind of like swayed with the music, I guess, so that helped with the standing, I guess. And then at the end they did like this whole ceremony with like some pomegranates and like this gold cross on a big plate with flowers around it, and he was like walking around the whole church with it, like circled around everybody in the pews or whatever. This one did have seats, we did have pews, so it was like the wooden ones. It wasn't like super comfortable, but at least they were there. So there was that. Some of the people were veiled, some of them were not. And then at the end he did give like a short little sermon, I guess it's called the homily, and it was maybe just 10 minutes, maybe, give or take. It was about like bearing your cross and what the purpose of the Holy Cross thing is, and they talked about like pomegranates. Oh yeah, and then they did the communion, and then it was super weird because they all used the same spoon, and I was like, oh no, I was like, I can't do that. That like freaked me out. And my daughter and my husband, the same thing. He goes, did they just use the same spoon? I was like, yeah, they did. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that. But I knew like we weren't supposed to take it because we're not baptized in the church. I did my research beforehand. So I was like, don't worry, we don't have to go up there. And he's like, I'm not going anyway. And I was like, no, me neither. So, but they did offer us the holy bread. And I didn't know that it was the holy bread. I thought it was communion bread. And I was like, no, it's okay. And she's like, this is not communion bread. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And so we took it. And my husband said it tasted like the challah bread that I make on Fridays. But he said mine was better, of course, because I put honey in it. But regardless of that, so then it finally finished, and then I guess we all had to, they gave us all like these wooden crosses somebody made, which was cool. I put them next to my little menorah in my kitchen, so that was cool. I like that. We all got like this wooden cross, and then we went outside, and this was the weirdest part. They had like this big pile of like these, I don't know if they're like holy water napkins or oil napkins or something that they've saved the whole year, and then they burn them, and then they burn like the palm leaves and all these things they've kept that they used in the liturgies throughout the whole year, and they keep it all in like a bag or in a tub. There was one with a tub and one with a bag, and they throw it all in the fire and they burn it. I still don't know what that meant. It was really strange. And then they were having like the kids help burn the stuff, like throw it in the fire, guys, like come on, and I was like, okay. And then they had the community thing after, where they had food and everything, but I wanted to stay, and so did my daughter, I wanted to like say hi to the priest, and I wanted to like meet some people and stuff, but he was just like, no, he wanted to leave. Like, he was freaked out about how similar it was to Catholicism. He was like, this is just like a Catholic service. This is just, this is he's like, I can't. He's like, this is not for me. He's like, my people are not here. And I was like, all right, well, I was like, it was super odd. I said, I don't really know what all this stuff means. I says, but I still want to like meet with a priest and ask him questions, and like, what am I supposed to be doing? And everybody says that I've read, that they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing during the service. So then we left and we went home. Something I noticed after the service is I was super sleepy, like not in like the normal way of like, oh, I'm a little bit tired. It was like this super calm, relaxed, peaceful, like, oh, like I'm so, like I felt so sleepy and just chill after the service. It was weird. So that was odd. It was strange. I don't know if it was like the incense or if it was just like the Holy Spirit calm. I don't know what it was. It definitely felt like God was there. Even though, like I said, it felt odd, I was confused about what was going on, why everybody was doing the things they were doing. I mean, I know obviously there's a reason for it all. And I did go home and do some research and like look up some things, and I did notice a lot of the stuff. It was kind of like how the tabernacle is in Exodus and stuff, and then the stuff in Revelation with the prayers rising to God, with the incense, and then, you know, just a few things like that. I did look that up just to see, but that was my experience with my first divine liturgy. It did feel odd. I've heard it's supposed to feel odd, and I'll keep you posted. I'm definitely going to talk to a priest, ask some more questions and do a little more research and find out exactly what everything means in the liturgy. And maybe I can, make a video on that. So if you decide to go, you can know a little bit more about what to expect.